We're going to get into like the
Hello everyone, welcome back again to the CSFL Podcast. We're joined today by a couple of different presenters and different panel members to crack through the discussions for the end of the season, looking forward into the playoffs now. As always, I'm joined by co-host Josh from the Titans. Josh, good to have you back on. You're in the playoffs, in the run now. Do you fancy your chances?
I feel a lot better about them than I did last year. I think last year was just was a fight to get into the playoffs, but this year, with some health, I feel like we can at least make it to a championship game. So I'm looking forward to the challenge.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We'll look forward to that later on in the show. But we're also joined by another guest today, a division rival for me, one that I am absolutely petrified about this playoffs. But we've got Zach here from the Green Bay Packers. Zach, it's great to have you on the show.
Yes, thanks for inviting me on here, and ready to get these playoffs started.
Yeah, and you have a healthy Aaron Rodgers this year, which is a huge plus for you, I imagine.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to finally have a healthy team going into the playoffs this year, and not looking forward to playing you guys though. So
we'll see. But yeah, we'll obviously talk about that later on as well. So we're going to basically break this show down into sort of a couple of different sections, really. We're going to talk a little bit about the season ending and discussions around some things there. Then we'll probably dive in and talk about different awards and, who might be in the running, because I know that's been a heated topic of debate between myself and our other co-host. Some crazy discussion around Vince Young that we'll have to just try and nullify. And Zach will obviously be the judge, jury, and executioner for that one today. And then we'll dive into the playoffs to end the show off. So let's start the show and let's crack on and talk about the season. So it's obviously finished. The regular season is over. But, I'm keen to hear from Zach and from Josh. Who are the teams for you that have stood out this year in terms of surprise you or look good? And who are the teams that maybe probably have underachieved from what you expected? Perhaps we'll start with Zach, because you obviously produced a really good season preview article. And some of your predictions are pretty much on point. But anyone who hasn't looked at that, go and have a look at it. But yeah, Zach, please feel free to jump in and tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with I think that first team listed right there on the screen. You can see the 49ers. I think they were kind of the biggest disappointment. I don't really keep up with too much on who's active and not active, but I think they've had their GM's been pretty busy, so I think that may have played a big part. But going into the year, they were my choice to come out of the West over the Cardinals. So to see them that far down in the standings was quite a surprise. And then kind of on the flip side, if you go look at the kind of the team that surprised me in a good way, if you look at Washington, I know that division's something else, but still, I mean, to come out of that division as a winner, we kind of pointed them out as having a great draft last draft, but they were so young, had a lot of holes on defense. So to get 7 wins is quite an accomplishment there.
Yeah, no, I think the Redskins had a really good year. With the qualification, obviously that division is really, really, really bad. But I think that they definitely showed that they're going to make some progress and that with the right moves, they're going to be a good team. So I would go with you on that one with some good surprise team of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree on Washington. Washington has impressed me, and we've talked about them on other podcasts when we've looked at the buy and sell podcast, for example. I was one of them that was all in on Washington this year, and I said they could take that division, and they obviously did. It was a down year for that National East, so no surprises there. I mean, the 49ers is an interesting one, Zach, though, and I want to pick your brain just a little bit on this to begin with. So they obviously made some really big off-season acquisitions in Raji and Laurinaitis in free agency, and you hinted in your season preview that some of these things might mean that they go from, I can't remember what their record was last year, but I think they were probably borderline playoffs. Looked in good shape with Kaepernick in at quarterback as well, who they drafted the year before. didn't quite pan out for them. Why do you think that is? Is it down to the GM inactivity possibly, or do you think there's other reasons that are underlying this?
Like I said, I don't know exactly how inactive or active the GM has been, so I may not be the best to comment on that. But I mean, they had 9 wins last year, if my notes are correct. So they had some pretty big acquisitions in free agency. I know this past offseason, they really kind of spent a lot of money. So at the very least, I would have thought they could have improved a game or two on their 9 wins last year. So to drop down to 6 wins was quite a surprise.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I kind of wonder about the activity level of that entire division. Not to, I am a bit active, so I think I kind of have an opinion on that. That I think that all 4 teams, were moderately active, and real life definitely comes into play there. So definitely not trying to knock anybody. Just stating it how it is. I kind of want to throw another team out there. And I know that we're kind of going around, but I just kind of when I was sitting here thinking, like last season, how I was kind of one of the few GMs to say that I thought that this was going to be the year that Carolina finally took their step, just oversaturation of talent, like just going to get you to the playoffs, and that kind of happened this year. And like to kind of prove the oversaturation of talent theory, they, as Chris was mentioning in the chat, the other day, they didn't even have Cam for most of the season, and they still made the playoffs. So, I want to really give him a shout out because he's been, the resident trade master of the league, and has finally massaged the roster to the point where it's a winner. So I think he would be could be definitely added to the list of teams that, were, I guess, I don't want to say overachievers, but you kind of have to get there before people can give you your flowers. So now they're there, you can give them their flowers.
Yeah, I agree. I personally think the Panthers have a really big decision for their playoff game, which we'll talk about probably a bit later on. But we'll be coming back to the Carolina Panthers. I'm going to throw another team in here since we're sort of just going around. Probably a team that I underestimated this year was the Indianapolis Colts. I figured that they would have another tough season. They lost a lot of talent on defense. Didn't quite address that for me. I know they managed to get Cushing in free agency and a couple of others to fill a gap, but I felt their back position was not good enough to be competing for a playoff spot. Clearly, I was proved wrong with that. When that crazy run they've just been on, winning 7 straight now. And the team that's probably has disappointed me the most, I'm probably going to say the Denver Broncos. I know Noah's been quite vocal on the Slack chat for the league about this being a difficult year for them. Not quite doesn't seem to have meshed well together. But I figured that team adding that talent that they've managed to in free agency, basically cleaning up some positions there. I thought that could be a team that would go 15-1, 16-0. It clearly was completely wrong on that one.
Yeah, I think he focused too much on, if I can have an opinion, I guess he focused too much on one side of the ball is what I would say, because his offensive line, like I just kept wondering when he was going to address that in the offseason, and it kind of just didn't happen. So I guess we really do see the value of an offensive line now. I don't know how Zach feels about that, but that's kind of how I think that worked out. But at the same time, considering how good of a game planner he is, I'd appreciate you not, challenging Noah before the playoffs start, because I might have to play him on the side of the bracket.
Yeah, I was going to add, I think the Broncos are kind of flying under the radar a little bit here. If you look at their schedule, they had a tough schedule, and then they had pretty close losses to the Lions and the Jags. They did have a couple ugly losses. I think they had a loss to the Chiefs. I think they lost early to the Bears. So there's some ugly losses you wouldn't expect, but there are some. I think they're a little better than their record would indicate. Yeah, no. It's, after you win your division or you win a championship, your schedule the next year is just not easy. We don't all get to be the Patriots, for their real life dynasties, just getting to walk to the playoffs every single year. 5 or 6 guaranteed wins. So I was kind of like not surprised the Broncos had some slippage, but the amount of it did surprise me a bit. I didn't think that they would struggle to win their division. I think that
if the Chiefs didn't have like, 15 players injured every game, that they might have actually had to like really fight for that division.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, just we'll talk about some different teams in the playoffs coming forward in the third part of the show. But just to recap on this point, I think there's another item I wanted to just go through. So Noah's talking about the Broncos GM. Noah posts a really good stats article every single season where he looks at offense, defense, and totals and pulls together these sort of average numbers using, I'm guessing, some calculation that he generates. And I think what's really telling this year is if you go back and look at this season and then you look at this season, there's a lot more parity now, a lot more parity in this league. It's astoundingly crazy. It's clear that there is no team like the Saints anymore. If you look, the Saints every single season on Noah's calculation here has always been in sort of six points in total. We haven't got a team like that anymore. The parity between sort of that middle, I don't know if I would say like 20 teams is just astoundingly crazy now, which to me shows that the GMs of the league are starting to get used to the engine, getting used to the game. And I think that's only going to get better going forward and make it a more competitive league.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I love the parity in the league right now. It's definitely not, you can't just, let your settings ride unless you're, you're whatever, Rouse installed before he left. You have to fight from game to game.
Yeah, no, and let's just hope he's okay and hopefully comes back soon, Rouse, because big loss for the league, that one. Right, shall we move on to the awards contenders this year? So I've pulled up the one that the game engine generates, which is obviously has some interesting weightings by position, in my opinion, but we'll use it to base our discussion off. I'm going to throw it open probably to Zach first and just say, let's ignore the Rookie of the Year discussion because that could be pretty much anyone at this stage. I'm just interested to get your view for league MVP, offensive MVP, and defensive MVP. Who have you got in for taking the award for those three?
Yeah, I'm not a huge as far as following player performances. I'm probably not the best one to comment on this. There's probably some other people in this league. I follow a lot of teams and different stuff like that. It's a lot of team stat stuff, but player stats, MVP, let's start there. I think you have to give it to the quarterback in my eyes, unless there's some other player that just blows everyone out of the water. To me, I'm on Team Stafford. I'll go that route for league MVP, although there's a number of choices I think that can rival that one. But to lead a team to 15-1 and to back it up with some of the efficiency numbers he has, it's hard to top that in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm sure we're gonna have some disagreement there, but I think it's close. But I'll go Stafford. Offensive MVP. I'm always kind of confused by MVP and offensive MVP. I guess you can give it to a running back here. I'm not really sure. Lynch. I think you have to go Peterson. Obviously, there's Lynch. There's a lot of good running backs in this league, though. But I'll go Peterson for offense MVP. And then I'm just going to skip defensive MVP just because I honestly haven't looked at it much. So I don't really think I'm probably the most qualified to comment on it right now.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you on defensive MVP. It's so hard. We were talking about this in the Slack chat, just how hard it is with some of the basic stats that we have and some of the advanced stats we don't have in this engine. It's really hard to work out who is actually really efficient on defense and actually really having a positive impact outside of, your basic stats of tackle, sacks, interceptions, those kind of basic things. But even then, it depends on the team and how much the defense is out there, the style they run. We can talk all day about defensive MVP, so perhaps we'll skip that one. Josh, I don't need to make any argument for Stafford. I've got Zach on my side. So we all heard the grunt as Zach mentioned Stafford. So, over to you, I guess, to argue your case for MVP.
Well, I think that the disagreement fundamentally lies into the definition of what's the MVP and what's the offensive player of the year. Obviously, one of those is most valuable to your team winning, and the other one is, best stats. So if there's anything Stafford has an argument for, it's Offensive Player of the Year. And the reason that I could make the case that Vince is more valuable to what we do in Tennessee than what Stafford does in Detroit is essentially that his career numbers aren't completely far off from what he's done every single season, in which the Lions, haven't had a record similar to this. And if you look at their addition of Bradshaw completely changed their offense. They are actually a run-dominated offense now. Bradshaw is leading the league in attempts and carries by, I think, almost 40 over the next running back. So, looking at that, if you were to actually go, look the game by game at their team record, Bradshaw actually got player of the game more times than Stafford did. If you go by sheer numbers, Stafford had a great, nice, consistent season, and when they had big games, the player who won player of the game, when they played against, the Packers of the world, and when they played against the Saints of the world, when you go look at the player who won player of the game in all of those games, it was not Matthew Stafford, it was Bradshaw. I think he had 4 player of the games, and Stafford maybe won it twice over the course of the entire season. And if you want to take that metric into account, Vince Young won player of the game 9 times for us this season. And another thing about that is, during those times where he won player of the game, these were 2 rushing touchdown games. He actually broke his record this season of games where he had multiple rushing touchdowns and multiple passing touchdowns. He also broke his record of rushing yards by almost 200, and he did that on 96 attempts. If he was a regular running back in the league, he would be a top 5 running back because he had 763 rushing yards and only 1 fumble, 10 rushing touchdowns, which is top 5, and actually led the league in yards per rush. And that's on top of having roughly he and Stafford had about the same attempts. I want to say about 430. So Vince Young did that on top of throwing just as much as Stafford does. So, like I said, it all goes down to, to me, what, the definition is most valuable player, like who's the most valuable to your team winning. I don't think that if you put Stafford on my team, we would be number 1 in the AFC about to go to the Super Bowl. Whereas I think if you put Vince Young on Detroit would, probably have a similar record, if not better, and be a lot harder to beat. And, that's just.
Yeah, it's very tough. It's very tough when you're talking about 2 distinctly different quarterbacks. It's obviously clear we're not going to agree on that, and we'll let the voting, by the other GMs to decide who might be in the running. But I won't talk too much about Stafford because I think Zach has highlighted it pretty well. But to throw a third name into the mix, because I think it's fair to, in my opinion, there's one other name that should be in the top 3, and that is Adrian Peterson. So if we're talking about impact on team, ability, setting league records, Adrian Peterson has done all that this year. He's run the most yards, 12 touchdowns. He's receiving yards of just under 100, which is not too bad. If you look at his performance, his impact on the Baltimore Ravens and their style of offense, he's had just as big an impact as the other 2, you could argue. So, yeah, who knows? We'll let the voting decide for MVP, but there's 3 really interesting names there, and it's going to be really interesting to see what GMs vote for, or whether they throw in a Michael Vick or an Adrian Foster. I don't know at this stage. On the offensive MVP, I'm going to throw. Honestly, Adrian Peterson should win it hands down. There's no, guys set the league record in yards, and it had an insane season. I mean, you could argue that he might next year be pushing 2,000 yards, possibly, if the Ravens continue on the trajectory they are. But I think he is the favourite. But I'm going to just throw very quickly to you guys another name out there. How good has Marshawn Lynch been for the Oakland Raiders, by the way? Has anyone looked at the stats? So if I go back to Noah's thing here, so the Raiders had the 7th best offense by whatever stat Noah puts together, and it's pretty much just because of one guy, this guy here. So I think it's fair to say if the Raiders have probably had a little bit of a lighter schedule, they had quite a tough schedule first 8 or 9 games, I think, then he could have easily been up there with Peterson this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I was just going to say I actually think it's a lot closer than maybe you're giving it credit. Just because if you look at the yards, I know Lynch doesn't have the team record and has a little more carries, but he actually has more yards and more touchdowns, I believe, than Peterson when you combine receiving and rushing. So it's an interesting little note there.
Yeah. On the worst offensive line as well, comfortably worse offensive line for the Raiders.
But I don't know. Again, like I don't know. I guess I just like being a huge basketball fan. I just think there should be like I make a sharp distinction in awards. I don't think there should be a narrative when it comes to the offensive player of the year. Just like offensively, who was the most impactful, who had the best numbers, who just had like just sheer blew the league away with their stats. And like for me, I would say it would have to be like like a Matt Schaub, the only quarterback in the league that threw for 4,000 yards and drug the Cardinals to the playoffs. Matthew Stafford, who has the highest quarterback rating in the entire league. That kind of efficiency, even though I don't think it was the most valuable part of the team. I think that kind of efficiency is incredible. If Vince Young would be another offensive player of the league for me. He's probably was 40 yards away from being the first player to rush pass for 3,000 and like a few hundred away from rushing for 1,000. So that's showing that's like actually like approachable in the league. And then like yes, I would put Adrian Peterson on that list as well, because 1,800 yards with 6 yards per carry is just absurdly good. And you can that fourth or fifth spot. It could be many people. You got to say it'd be Marshawn Lynch or things like that. But like for me, I don't really like football is a team sport. Like any of the numbers you put up are contingent upon what the other people on the field are with you are doing. So if you're you have a good offensive line and you're a bad running back, you're not going to be out there shattering records. So it's just for me, it's just the numbers are what the numbers are.
Yeah, and
that's how I like divide those awards in my head to like make the distinction, because I think that like in a lot of sports they get blurred by fans.
It reminds me this year of just how good, like obviously we're using players from typically this era. Just how good was the running back position in this era? Like it's just insanely good, and it's just fantastic. Bringing it to light, isn't it? I think every team has a quality, all like Pro Bowl level running back pretty much, which is insane. So.
I was fun in the offseason just seeing how many running backs were like how many teams were going after running backs, how many weren't. Like it seemed like every team in the league had at least one elite running back on their roster. So like the position didn't get leapt on right away.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. So that we've covered a little bit of the awards. I mean, obviously everyone watching the awards voting will be up shortly. As a GM, obviously you're expected to vote on it. We've thrown a couple of names at you, but we'll obviously come back once the voting is all completed and probably see how the land lies really with some of these. They could be quite tight, I think, this year. Let's move on to the playoffs though. So obviously we finished the regular season. We're in the playoffs now. We've got the wild card games coming up on Thursday. We've got some absolute crackers here, I think. I don't know about you, Josh. Obviously sitting there and waiting to see who we're going to play. But there are some really good games in both divisions.
Yeah, no, I love these matchups. I'm like super excited to see a few of the games. Like the Cardinals just like shocked everybody last year, and I just kind of want to see if they can go on like that run again. Like I keep flashing back to how none of us saw that coming, and they just marched their way straight up to almost to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And on the other side, like the clash of the Titans, the champ against the last year's second AFC team. Like the Jaguars have had back-to-back really consistently good years, and they're only getting better. Their trajectory is up because they don't make a lot of trades. They've still got all of their picks. They make shrewd signings. So it's a matter of time before they break the wall. And will it be this season?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's some really good games here, and I mean, so Zach, obviously you're in an interesting position because you talked about the Redskins earlier and how they've had a good season. Granted, probably the team entering this wild card with the worst record in the league. Their division's been interesting. you've managed to get some real good performance out of the rookie quarterback in Pryor. How tricky a game do you think this one's going to be for you on Thursday?
Yeah, I mean, it's playoff football, so I mean, it's one game you go home. So if you lose, you go home. So on paper, I should easily win this. Of course, the key word on paper. I mean, if you look at their offense, it's bottom 10 in almost every category. They do have a pretty average defense, not too terrible. They kind of keeps them in games, but yeah, I mean, obviously they did. If you look at my schedule, they beat me back in, I forget what week it was, but early in the season. Of course, that was the game I had 5 turnovers and didn't get a single turnover myself. So it's kind of one of those crazy games. I hope not to see repeated come wild card weekend. So anything can happen, as it's already been proven this year.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because obviously you said they beat you earlier on in the season. Probably Rodgers' worst performance of the season as well. So, we'll see how it plays out. But, I mean, you got to fancy your chances for that one. And, I mean, is there anything in terms of performances you're hoping to get out of the Packers this year? I mean, you've got obviously Rodgers healthy this year. You've changed around a couple of different positions in free agency. Do you feel you've addressed some of the weaknesses you probably had in the past couple of seasons, or where do you see it sort of shaking out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the season went pretty much how I expected. I thought my defense kind of took a slight step back. I think last year I had top 5 defense. This year it's kind of borderline top 10. Still good, still above average, but not quite what it was last season, which I lost a little bit of talent, so that wasn't surprising. Offensively, it's been kind of a mixed bag. I think I've put up pretty good numbers, but Rodgers has kind of had the turnover bug a little bit this year, so that's been frustrating. I think that's going to be kind of my biggest challenge as we go into the postseason. See if I can get that under control. If I can win the turnover battle, I think I have a good shot, or I mean, I have a fair shot in every game. So
yeah,
I think for you, man, if you can get to Pryor, like it's a wrap. I mean, I think the dude's taking I think he might be leading the league in sacks for starting quarterbacks. Or yeah, he's pretty darn close to it. Because I was looking at quarterbacking stats earlier today. So yeah, I think I remember seeing that. So,
and I've actually done well. I think last year I was bottom 5 in sacks, and this year I'm top 5 in sacks, or close to it, if not. So that should bode well for me.
Yeah, let's say most sacked quarterback against the team with the most sacks. I think we have between you and the Ravens. So there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be an interesting game. Obviously the Washington's first playoff game, I think, with Kurt. So we'll see how he strategizes against you as well. He might throw something different, who knows? But that's going to be a fascinating matchup. If we come back to the other matchup in the National now, just to have a look at it. So we've got the Carolina Panthers, who Josh, you rightly said, team that has finally looks like they've cracked the code of the talent they've got, against the Cardinals, who had the Cinderella story last year and just completely blew the league away. I mean, Zach, focusing obviously in same conference as us. How do you see that one panning out?
Yeah, I think this is going to come down to rush defense here. Cardinals have been atrocious stopping the run. I believe they're ranked 32nd stopping the run, so you can't get much worse. And then yards per rush, Panthers are 6th yards per rush. So if the Cardinals can't stop the run, this could get ugly. I think. And then on the flip side, the one good thing the Cardinals do well is they have amazing receivers. They got Greg Jennings and then Fitzgerald, maybe 2 of the better receivers in the game. So that's really helped Schaub out this year. So we'll see if they can put enough points on the board. The Panthers defense has been a little shaky, so that kind of is worrisome, but we'll see if the Cardinals can stop the run.
Yeah. For me, this game, I think it's going to be really close because the Cardinals' strength is arguably what the Panthers should be good at. Like their secondary, just in sheer ratings, like they have some of the fastest secondary players in the league. Like I think isn't Bethea on their team, if I remember correctly, along with a few other guys. So, and I think I actually might have given them some depth this year. So they have a really deep secondary, and the best part of the Cardinals offense is Matt Schaub throwing for 4,000 yards, which again, like I don't know if Like I really took a hard look at him today because like, man, I just hadn't really paid attention to his numbers until someone pointed it out in the chat this year. But he threw for like, I think he threw like almost 100 more attempts than everyone else, like over 500 and something attempts and for over 4,000 yards, and like still had like a really high level of accuracy. So, Matt Schaub and was up there for really high level quarterbacking this year. So, it'd be kind of my strength against your strength. It'll be cool to see which one breaks.
Yeah, it's interesting though too. The Panthers on paper, I mean, if you look at their roster, they have a ton of talent in their secondary, but they haven't really. If you look at the numbers, they haven't really done all that well stopping the pass. So that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah,
see how they do this game.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a scheme thing or not. But yeah, no, we'll find out. Like, we'll definitely find out. And I think Cleesby was going to point out that you said that there was a
I completely agree with everything you guys have said. I think what's fascinating is that when we look at the Cardinals last year to this year, their offensive scheme has completely changed, completely pivoted. They were so heavy on Richardson last year at running back and running the ball down people's throats. That's what got them through. This year, they're so pass-heavy focused. It'll be interesting to see how that does. But for me, on the Panthers side, they've got a big decision to make at quarterback, in my opinion. If I look at it, for me, if I was looking at this, if I was the GM of the Panthers, I would not be starting Cam Newton. I would actually, honestly, I'd be looking to trade Cam Newton. I just don't feel these performances are good enough for what they want. I feel he doesn't perform him well. He gets injured too often. His turnovers are an issue. And I think that they're better off going with someone like McCowan. If I had to guess, McCowan or McNabb would be my choice. I would probably start McNabb for this playoffs and go from there. I don't think Kate Harrison will do that for the Panthers, but that to me, I think he's got a big decision to make there on Thursday, because that, in my opinion, will make or break that game.
So yeah, it's crazy to me because I mean, Cam's ratings are in line for just really good quarterbacking play. Like, he has the intelligence and the accuracy and the arm for him to be able to pretty much do the whole playbook from what I've managed to evaluate so far. So like, his performances definitely like stand out strangely to me. I wonder whether that way. And the only thing I can think of is maybe just because like, his speed and agility ratio is a little off. So, maybe it's a little deceiving. He's not as agile in the pocket as one would think. So he, takes a lot of sacks, and maybe his game hasn't developed. I don't know. I feel like I'm like stretching to try to figure out what exactly is up.
Look, I can't put my finger on why he's more ineffective than McNabb. I honestly don't know. I don't know whether it's scheme, whether it's to do with the ratings. I honestly have no idea.
But I will say this season he was putting up a 91 rating.
Yeah, but McNabb's been better. It's my simple argument. McNabb's been, rating-wise, has been better.
Yeah, I mean, go.
I think he's got a big decision. He's got a big decision. Should we move on to the American Conference, and perhaps start with you, Josh, because again, this is your conference. I mean, do you want to try and break down the Colts, Patriots, and the Jags, Broncos for us?
Sure. Well, the Colts Patriots is going to be a shootout. Like, just I was going to actually say you're a little hard on yourself at the top of the chat, because you said that you were just completely off about the Colts defense, and I really don't think you were. I think that they can get just enough stops and just enough turnovers to win the game on offense, which is really hilarious, because this is how they won during this time period as well. Their defense was all right, but it was perpetually injured. And so Manning had to go out there and throw for absurd numbers, which he's not really doing here. So that's kind of where the comparison ends. But they are doing what we said they would have to do to win these games. They are out. They are just turning every game into a shootout and outscoring teams. And I think that they were a little helped by their schedule. So it'll be interesting to see them play a team of the Patriots caliber, because they haven't played a team that good in a few weeks. So that's going to be a really big matchup. That and Rizzo seems to finally have his thumb on the pulse of his team a little bit more lately. They seem to be performing up to like having the highest average ratings of any team in the league. So we'll see how that goes. But I think that's going to be a really good matchup. And if I had to take a pick, I would pick the Patriots. But I do that hesitantly. It wouldn't shock me to see the Colts win, because I think that the Patriots' weakness seems to be the pass, and Jed is really good at game planning passing offenses, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Zach, what's your thoughts on the Colts Patriots?
Yeah, most of the season, if you were to ask me about a game like this, I would definitely said Patriots. Colts been playing well though lately, so they're kind of hard to put my finger on kind of what to make out of the Colts. Obviously, their passing game with Manning hasn't been the greatest, but we'll see if I think. I mean, they're a solid team. Though. I think it's going to be pretty close. If, like I said, if I had to pick though, again, I'd go Patriots. So we'll see though.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, for me, I think the Patriots, if they just turn up, should get through against the Colts. I think the Colts will put up good numbers against the Patriots, and as you said, both of you said, it's going to be a shootout. I expect that to be the highest scoring game in all these 4 wild cards that we've got. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on to the Jags against the Broncos. Josh, what's your thoughts on this one? This for me. This is the one that would be the prime time viewing box office material for the league.
Yeah, no, I refuse to make a pick for this one. I'm not getting anybody any bulletin board material. No, honestly, I really don't know. The Jags and the Broncos, I think, are extremely even. I think the Jags defense might be the most versatile defense in the league. They can, if you're a passing team, then they'll switch and they'll shut down your pass and give you the run. So and if you're a running team, they'll shut down your run and like give up the pass. So, you kind of have to be really strategic with your game planning when you play against the Jaguars. And the other thing that they really excel at is generating turnovers, especially if they're at home. And that's I think they are. So the Broncos have to be leery of that, because, when I played them in Tennessee, we beat them, relatively, I won't say easily, but we beat them. I think I don't even think they got a touchdown. I think we held them to field goals. But when we played them in Jacksonville, we had 5 turnovers. And like that was a season high. Like that was flashbacks of my very first season where we were just, turning the ball over left and right. So I think that the Broncos are going to really have it in for them. And, whatever the worst part of their offense is, that the Jaguars are going to attack that, and they're going to force turnovers there. So they're going to have to figure out which side of the ball the Jaguars are going to try to take from them and adapt accordingly.
Yeah, for my opinion, I think this is going to be the lowest scoring game, which is ironic.
Yeah, I'm talking like 12-7.
I could see it being like 9-3. I could see there being no touchdowns in this game. Both teams are just stupidly good defensively. And we know they've both got frailties on offense that both of these GMs will game plan against. I have no doubt about that. So this could, honestly, this could be like, if I was comparing it to a game we've had in the CSFL, I could see this being a little bit like, I think the game I had 2 years ago with the Saints, where it was, I want to say it was like 16-12 or something really, not 16-12, it must have been like 15-12, but every single point came from field goal. Yeah. I could see this being.
This is
like
basically a conference championship game in like round one.
Yeah. Zach, what do you think on this one?
Yeah, I'm picking Broncos, but that, like we already kind of talked about the Broncos a little bit earlier, and me picking the Broncos says more about kind of what I think about the Broncos than it does the Jags. I like the Jags a lot. I think the Broncos are kind of flying under the radar. The Jags had really impressive wins this season. They beat the Colts on the road. They had wins, Titans, Broncos, Ravens. So, that's a really impressive run of victories there for the Jags. I really like their team. I just think the Broncos are going to come out just a little bit better. The one kind of worry about the Jags is they kind of like the Cardinals I talked about earlier. They're the only playoff team that also ranks outside the top 20 stopping the run this year. So, and when you look at the AFC, it's just has a ton of top heavy, just power run teams. Look at the Titans and the the Broncos. I mean, all those teams can run really well, so that's kind of a worry for the Jags for me.
Yeah, I agree with both of you saying on that game as well. I think we've got four really good games here. Before we end the show, I just would like to recap and get both of you to just name which teams you see coming through. I mean, it's probably pretty obvious for the one of the wild card games in the National for you, Zach. But what are the other three games looking like for you? So you said the Broncos for the American, the bottom wild card. What about the Colts Patriots?
Yes, I had Patriots there, and then the top I'll take myself, and the Panthers and Cardinals is tough. I'll take Panthers, but that one's a coin flip to me. If you're looking at, are you asking about who I think's gonna go to the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean, yeah, you can throw that one in there now. I mean, obviously we've got a couple of games to go before that, but
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, kind of going back all the way to my season preview, I was real high on the Ravens, and then I had obviously the Lions winning it all. So I'll stick with those two teams coming out on top. But I think AFC is just so many good teams. I think it's impossible to predict. I mean, I don't even know how. I'm real high on the Broncos. I'm real high on the Titans and the Ravens. So those are my top three by far. But I couldn't even choose between.
Sure.
Who might come out?
Yeah, it's close. It's some really good teams in here. And Josh, what are your thoughts?
I would go Panthers, Packers, Patriots, and I'm actually Jaguars have home field, correct?
I don't know, actually.
No.
I don't think they do.
They have the better record, but not home field.
Okay, because if they had home field, I was going to pick the Jaguars. I'm picking whichever team has home field in that matchup.
Okay, so the Broncos. And do you have a pick like Zach for the Super Bowl attendees?
No.
No, you're not going to comment on that one yet.
No.
Okay, cool. So I'll finish up then. So I think that the Broncos will come through against the Jaguars. I'm sorry, Jaguars, but I just Broncos are the sleeping giant in my opinion in that one. I see the Patriots coming through in the other American wild card. Packers beating the Redskins, and then I honestly think that the Cardinals will get through against the Panthers. I think that the Panthers will make the wrong decision at quarterback, honestly. And then I don't know about the Super Bowl, to be honest with you. My favorite probably for getting through to the Super Bowl will probably be Titans Packers if I had to pick, or maybe the Ravens Packers. I mean, honestly, the Ravens Titans, if they got to the American Finals game, that'll be a completely fascinating game to watch. But we'll certainly see. So that ends the last section of our show for today. Thank you very much, Josh, for coming back on as always as co-presenter. It's great to have you back on, and best of luck for the playoffs with the Titans.
Appreciate it.
And Zach, thank you very much. Yeah, and Zach, thank you very much for coming on. Best of luck with your wildcard game against the Redskins. And thank you very much on behalf of the league for your season previews and how unbelievably accurate they were. So please, next year, we will certainly have some more of that.
Yeah, the pressure's on. Pressure's on for next year now, so gotta repeat.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, I hope everyone enjoys the playoffs. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see what on earth happens over the next couple of weeks and who takes the Super Bowl for this year.